Right.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the First Time Buyer webinar. We welcome you all here today. We're doing it with association with Savills. I'd like to introduce our panel today. We have a very exciting person that's joining us or has joined us, Jonnie Irwin, who is very well known on your TV screens. He presents Escape to the Country and A Place in the Sun. And we really thank you, Jonnie, for giving up your time today. Thank you so much. I'd also like to welcome the rest of our panel, Asha Agarwal, who's Director and Head of Shared Ownership Sales at Savills, Rupi Hunjan, who's CEO of Sensio Financial, Adam Crawford, his partner and Head of New Build Sales at Prince Evans Solicitors, and Jade Turnstill, who's Digital Marketing and Communications Manager at Share to Buy. So welcome everybody, and we'll start off with our first question. Today our subject is knowledge is key to your buying your first home. If we have a first question, please.
Okay. The first question we have is, what steps can I take before applying for a mortgage that will make the process smoother?
Oh, so Rupi, would you be able to help us with that one, please?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I take it most people are sitting at home and got time. You've tidied the garage, tidied the house, tidied everything. It's about tidying your finances, really. And I will start off with making a budget, get onto your Excel, work out what you spend, what you save. You probably realize you're spending a little bit less right now. So the banks are going to look at usually 3 months bank statements. So, you know, and then they're going to look at your pay slips, get everything together, even print them out if you can, get a folder together. You're about to spend a substantial amount of money, so it requires a bit of time, get everything together ready, and then start looking around and understanding mortgages. Everything you need is on the internet and the web. Learn, sit there, take the time out, read up on everything. So when you actually see an advisor, a specialist advisor, if you're buying through a scheme like shared ownership or help to buy, you're not wasting your time on things that aren't as relevant. Increase your knowledge as much as you can and get ready to, and then also start looking for the house. You can work out what you can afford and where you can live whilst you're sitting at home for the next 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever. And then when we're ready, go and talk to someone in person. It's definitely worth talking to someone in person, especially a specialist. You're about to spend best part of 400,000, 500,000, 300,000. Warrants a proper conversation, but at that time, make that time relevant. So gather as much information as you can, put it in a folder, off you go.
Very good. Jonnie, have you got anything to add? I mean, obviously Rupi's covered a lot of it.
Yeah, I think I'm always keen to get first-time buyers into the zone. It's a huge step, buying your first home, and it can be one that puts you in almost in a state of shock, certainly financial shock. So I ask people to sort of start to live their life in a way their life will be changed. So some people live like church mice for the 2 years prior to buying a home. Some people are lucky enough to have got a deposit together before then. But I think it's the first year of owning a house that is the biggest shock to their financial senses. So I ask people to start living in that mode. So to try to find out exactly what the cost of running this new property will be, electricity costs, council tax costs, all these overheads, and start to have that budget in mind and start to modify the way you spend your money. Chances are you're not going to be going off on a Caribbean holiday the day after you complete on the first property. You're not going to be buying a new car. You're not going to be buying a lot of these things. So start to get yourself in a zone of what it feels like to be a new property owner and what it feels like to be paying these kind of bills on a regular basis before you buy that property.
Very good advice. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, do we have another question?
Yes, we do. What steps should I have done before looking for a lawyer? Any thoughts there?
Oh, Adam, what?
Thank you. I don't necessarily think there's many steps you need to take before looking for a lawyer. It's probably something you should start thinking about at the time you're looking for a property. I would suggest you sort of phone around some lawyers, get quotes of their fees and what the associated costs are, things like your stamp duty, land registry fees, so that you can cost up your whole purchase. I would also suggest that you sort of go with someone that's recommended, either by an agent, developer, housing association, or even a friend. Obviously, it's always better to use someone who you know someone else has had a good service from. And there's no need to use necessarily a local solicitor. Everyone does everything electronically these days. And look for a lawyer that specialises in what you're purchasing. So if you're buying a new build property or you're buying a shared ownership property, then I'd certainly look for someone that specialises in that area.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that, Adam? It's being an ex-agent myself, I was always very keen on getting in the middle of deals, using lawyers that were communicative. And I echo your chat on getting someone that's recommended to you. Lawyers are a service profession. And so it's important to get a lawyer that's going to be on your wavelength in the way they communicate to you. They are working for you. They are facilitating this deal. So whilst you put all of your trust into this lawyer will be helping you. Yeah. So it's important you get the right lawyer that you are comfortable with, and that normally, as you say, comes with a recommendation from someone that's used them before.
Absolutely. Very good. Another question, please.
Yeah, we've got a few coming in, which is great. One here, I've been considering buying off plan. What are your thoughts on this? Is it a good idea? Is it something that as a first-time buyer I should be thinking about?
Asha, can you advise about off-plan?
Off-plan sales are very popular, especially on a new build property. A lot of developers will launch anything from 6 months in advance off-plan. Off-plan is no different to obviously buying a property that isn't off-plan. There will always normally be a show home available. Sales consultants are specially trained. There'll be marketing plans. So be assured that the sales consultant on that site will work you through the floor plan, work you through the property you're interested in, and help you visualize actual property. But buying off-plan is absolutely a safe method to buy through. And a lot of new build properties are off-plan sales at the moment.
Jade, have you got anything to add to that?
We do. So on Shared to Buy, we're basically a property portal that lists kind of shared ownership and help to buy homes, and we definitely see interest in off-plan homes as well. I think it's a good way to kind of get ahead of the game as well, and to kind of see what's coming in the local area and stuff. And often, I don't know if you'd agree with this, Asha, but off-plan often have slightly lower price points as well, because you're buying with some sort of variations in plans and stuff.
Not on shared ownership. So on shared ownership, it is a fixed price. Price is not negotiable on shared ownership, as it is a government-funded scheme. So if you're buying off-plan or not buying off-plan, the price will still be the same. The benefit of buying off-plan is that you get more of a choice of properties available. So the sooner you get in, the more chance you have of finding a better, vast choice of properties. Where if you're buying normally the properties that are not off plan, they're the ones that are remaining. So if you are really keen on a particular development, get in as early as possible. That's where all the sales will be. On a private sale property, sometimes the price is negotiable, but normally being off plan and not being off plan doesn't really make a difference on price.
Okay, that's good to know.
And at the moment, where people can't actually visit developments, can you just explain what's happening? Because a lot of housing associations and developers are sort of showing people around, aren't they, with virtual tours?
Yeah, so at Savills, we're promoting virtual viewings alongside major house developers and housing associations. So now, as Whoopi said earlier, you've got a bit more time in your hand. So now is a time to actually have a look at the properties that are available, speak to the consultants, ask any questions that you have, and then all the properties are virtually viewing. So you're actually on your laptop and you can virtually see inside the properties. You can actually have one-to-one appointments with sales consultants and ask as many questions. This is a great time to actually have that one-to-one help and support while you're at home and everyone's got a bit more time on their hands. So definitely utilize this time wisely and kind of ask all the questions that you need to know about the buying process and any properties you're interested in.
Can I just add to that, actually? From a buyer's perspective, I noticed sometimes there's a slight reticence of a buyer when they come to thinking about buying off plan. What will it look like in the future? How comfortable am I going to be with the quality of this? And I always recommend to buyers, and they can get the information from the agents, I'm sure you'll agree, Asha, that go and have a look at one of their previous developments. Property, you know, with my surveyor's hat on, it's a long-term asset. And whilst you should be covered by a builder's guarantee of at least 10 years, you want to see the quality of the build and how it has matured over time, the quality of the materials, the grounds, how happy people are. And you can visit a previous development. So there might be another development that they've built down the road. It's worth traveling to a different town. Some of these guys are regional. Go and have a look at a development that they've built that's maybe 2-3 years old and satisfy yourself that it's a quality product, and you can get talking to some of the people that live there and see what it's like to live there, and talk to them about snagging issues and what it was like when you first completed, and satisfy yourself that what you're putting your money down on now will be exactly what you're expecting it to be when it comes online.
Very true. Absolutely. Thank you. Do we have another question?
Yeah, so we're one that's just come in. I'm not sure who would be able to help with this. How do I find out about the council tax ban for new development, which is part of a larger scheme?
Maybe Adam, do you know about the council tax?
Well, I think the first port of call is to actually ask the developer. They should actually know what the council tax bans are. Secondly, if you look on local authority websites, they'll tell you what council bans are and what the rates are. That's the first place to start.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it will always be an estimate at the beginning, because until the property is built, the council tax specialist will then go to the property and value the property and band it correctly. So when you're buying a property, a new build property, the council tax ban won't be confirmed until after the hand over the building.
Okay, but you get a rough idea, I suppose.
All sales consultants on site should have an estimated council tax banding for the property that you're purchasing.
Great.
I think it's really encouraging that people are asking that kind of question. It shows that buyers are really drilling down into their budget and their outgoings. I'm encouraged by that.
Very much so. It's really good. Do we have another question?
Yes, we do. One here about shared ownership. I want to use shared ownership to get on the property ladder, but I don't know how to find a home that is available with it. Where can I find out where to buy the best shared ownership homes?
Oh, so Jade, could you tell us about shared
Might be one for
ownership?
Jane.
Yeah, of course. So this is exactly what we do at Share to Buy. We're a property portal that specialise in first-time buyer homes, so shared ownership, Help to Buy and the sorts. And we have thousands of homes available up and down the country, kind of London, home counties, but also all the way up in Manchester, down in Cornwall. So no matter where you're looking to buy, you'll be able to find something kind of within your area. So when looking, what I would say is on Share to Buy, there's a property search function which enables filters and whatnot. So if you're in those kind of really early stages of looking, you might have quite vague kind of filters that you want to put in place, just your area plus kind of like a 5-mile radius. You might have an idea of your deposit. You can search for that just to get a good idea of kind of what's available in the area. And what they'll also have is a mixture of available now and coming soon, so you can see what's coming up in your area, and also a mixture of new build and resale if you're looking at shared ownership as well, because both are very popular for their own individual reasons. And later down the line, what you can then do is kind of hone in on your search a little bit. So actually now you know you want to be within 3 miles of this area because of actually a local school that your child already goes to, or because it's near to work. You can add your kind of monthly cost you're looking to spend, your kind of maximum deposit, and the more you put into that search criteria, the kind of more niche the search is, and you're getting closer and closer to finding what is technically your ideal home. And what I would say as well for people that are looking, no matter what stage they're at, if you're searching on our site, I would recommend signing up for what we have is called alerts, which are like email blasts that you get when providers list new properties or resale properties. And that means that you're kind of always ahead of the game. And as well as that, I'd say make sure you're on everything that you can be. Make sure that you're signed up to sales agents' websites like Savills, or that you're looking directly on the housing providers and the housing associations' websites, because there's so much information out there and there's so many homes that it's often quite overwhelming for buyers, and I think it can seem you can get quite bogged down with it. So make sure you're just looking everywhere, looking frequently, and you will find what you're looking for eventually.
Absolutely. Asha, you obviously your website is full of shared ownership homes as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I think that Jade said, I mean, you need to, the best way to start is narrowing down the areas that you're looking for, the location you're looking for. Once you know the location, you can then search for the properties that are available, call the number, speak, ask as many questions, and go and have a look at a few different properties. Go and have a look at them. They're normally open on a Saturday or in weekdays, and pop along, answer questions. And they say when you're buying a property, when you walk in, you know that's the property for you. So once you get that feel, go with what your heart says, ask questions, and I think that's the best step to get onto the property ladder.
Sure. Jonnie, anything to add? Sorry.
Yeah, I echo Asha in particular. It's about asking questions. The modern estate agent, especially in this specific sector, are able to give so much information. I think it's a lazy it's a lazy stereotype to look at estate agents as people that just flog houses. Estate agents in this sector know so much about the product because they know they're dealing with people that it's their first purchase. So use them. Yes, they're minded to sell. Yes, their mandate is with the client, the vendor. They're getting paid by the vendor, but they're helping the vendor if they sell the property, and they do that by giving information. So give some trust to the estate agent, ask as much from them as possible. And if you've got the time, if that type of person, go to the viewing and always follow up with an email or a telephone conversation with, just so you know, I'm interested in that. Give them as much feedback as possible, because whilst the onus might be on you to find your property, you know, going through Jade's portal or going direct to the agent or the property developer, the more you tell these people, the more they can give to you back the information that you'll need. The more you tell them what you like and what you don't like, the more they can hone their own search on your behalf and show you perhaps something a little bit more sensible and more suitable. So many times buyers come to this with either a highly emotional point of view or a highly, probably sometimes too pragmatic point of view. And the pragmatist never gets that fluffy feeling, as Asha mentioned, when they walk through the door, and then probably never gets the point of making the decision. And likewise, the emotional person probably wants to fall in love with the first property they see. And the agent, people managing portals, developers as well, there is an element of, you give them some of your trust, they often help you make your decision and give you a slightly more balanced view.
Absolutely. And also, I would just say, First Time Buyer magazine, obviously, we produce that. It's always got masses of information. It is a guide to help you through this maze of things you have to know about before you start your property search. I see we've had a question about how to sell a shared ownership home. So if you've bought one and you want to sell and move on, Asha, can you explain about how that works?
Yes, so with shared ownership, so you can sell your property. There's normally a dedicated team within the housing association that you've bought the property. Normally within a shared ownership lease, there is a speculation where there is 8 weeks that the housing association have to find you another shared ownership buyer to obviously sell your property, but you're not tied in. If there isn't someone else that wants to buy the property through shared ownership, you can then go onto the open market and sell your property. So there isn't no, I know sometimes people think you're stuck once you buy a shared ownership, you're stuck. No, you can sell on the open market, you can sell your property and move into another property. So there's always a dedicated team who will help you through that process.
Right. Adam, with the if you're selling a shared ownership home, is there any complications at all, or any advice about how you do that from a conveyancing point of view?
As Asha just said, there is an 8-week period generally where housing associations have a chance to find a new buyer. Some people see that as negative, but I actually think it's positive, because there's hundreds and thousands of people who want to buy shared ownership properties. So your housing association may find you a buyer quite quickly and relatively stress-free. Most housing associations will charge you a fee, similar to what an estate agent charges you. So nothing unreasonable. You know, it's what you'd have to pay if you were selling via an estate agent. And if they fail to find you a buyer within that 8-week period, You're then free to sell on the open market, but not just to sell your existing share on the open market. You can actually sell 100% share and back-to-back staircase, which means you can effectively buy 100% of the property and immediately sell it to the buyer using the buyer's money. So it becomes very much like a sort of normal product in that sense.
Rupi, when you're financing something like that, is it if you're, I mean, I didn't realise actually, it's news to me that you can actually sell it on the open market for 100%. So is there any sort of financial implications there at all?
The mortgage, the lenders and the mortgage providers, they feel that it's a mortgageable property and they'll provide you a mortgage just like any other shared ownership mortgage. Not all of them not all the providers let you mortgage to 100%, but most do.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a transaction like anything else.
Straight transaction.
What we find, the demand for second-hand shared ownership property is quite high because it's slightly cheaper than a brand new product.
Yeah.
And it might only be 5 years old. So it's like buying a second-hand car. You're not paying the extra taxes and or premium.
No, it's not the premium.
So if you are looking for shared ownership, it's definitely worth looking at second-hand property as well as brand new build, because it gives you a bit more of a choice. And going back to the portals, if you're in London, take a look at the Homes for Londoners portal. That has every housing association that's selling have to put their properties on that portal. And that will help you. So there's that portal, the Zoopla, the Metro do things, the Evening Standard do things. There's loads of information out there. And you're sitting at home, take the time out to take a look, and you'll get yourself the home that you really want.
I think from my point of view, I was initially rather skeptical with shared ownership when it first came out, but the market is now matured. I think it's knocked off any foibles that it might have had, and because it's music to my ears the fact that there's so much demand for a second-hand shared ownership property, because the market can see it works. The market can see that there is a market after you own it as well. And that was, and initially, I think some of the skepticism was, it's all very well and good, but who are you going to sell it on to? Yeah. And in terms of market forces, once you could convince the market that there will be a second-hand owner, a third-hand owner, that inherently builds value. And it's, for me, from a property point of view, it's all about residual values as well. So whilst, of course, I'm focused on helping people get their first property, I also want them to get a property that they can sell on, that they have an asset. And the fact that this market is now matured over the past 10 years or so, it means that now you're buying into something that is not only sustainable, that is attractive as well to a future buyer. The day you buy is the day you sell.
Absolutely. And Jay, do you have resale shared ownership properties on your site?
Yes, yeah, we do. So pretty much when people are searching on Share to Buy, you can even choose specifically whether you want to look for new build or resale. So pretty much when you do an initial search where you just put in, say, Hackney or Manchester or Devon or wherever you're looking to buy, it will come up with all of them. So all new build, all resale in a list based on kind of your criteria, based on nearest proximity. But you can specify whether you want to search for new build, resale, and they'll come up as well as their own individual searches. Because we do find that a lot of people come to us at events and stuff and they're like, you know, everyone's looking for new build, but actually we see a huge amount of people looking for resale, exactly like you guys have said. It's very, very popular.
Asha, do you have resales on Savills?
We do have a limited amount of resales, but with resales, the buyers tend to go back to the housing association that they bought the property from. So the housing association have a specialist resale dedicated team.
Right, I understand. Lovely, thank you. Could we have another question?
Yes, a question about shared ownership again. With a shared ownership property, how much should be kept aside for other fees, such as solicitors' fees, and what are the extra costs, basically, I think is the question.
Okay, Rupi, have you, I mean, I'm sure that...
Oh, the fees we've broken down from administration fees to brokers, fees for solicitors, fees for moving, and I think it's around, if you budget an extra £3,000 to £5,000 depending on where you live,
right.
I think that's about right. But you know, a lot of the mortgage companies giving you free valuations right now in the market we're in. Some of those fees might be waived by housing associations or developers, and you need to negotiate how much you need to put aside with each individual product out there.
Yeah.
Adam, on the conveyancing, obviously all solicitors charge different prices, but is there a sort of a ballpark figure that you can give us?
I'd probably say somewhere in the region, if you're buying a shared ownership property, you're probably looking at about £800 to £1,200 for solicitors' fees. As a ballpark, it does vary wildly. What I would again reiterate is make sure you use someone who's got expertise in that area. You don't want to be paying without being rude to factory conveyancers, you don't want to pay a factory conveyancer £399 to do your shared ownership purchase and then find it just never goes anywhere because they don't really understand it.
No.
In terms of other costs, obviously you need to think about things like stamp duty, land registry fees, conveyancing search fees. It's sort of too wide a question to be able to give a sort of specific detail.
Yeah, of course, you can't do it.
Who's looking to buy, shops around now, gets some quotes, gets an idea of the costs. And with stamp duty, there's first-time buyers relief for properties under £500,000. So chances are, if you're buying a shared ownership property as a first-time buyer, you probably won't have to pay stamp duty. So that's a great benefit to take.
Absolutely.
Can you confirm, Adam, for anybody viewing this, the stamp duty you're paying, are you paying the stamp duty on your share or on the open market share?
But you've got two choices. You can either pay on the share and the rent, or you can pay on the full market value. If you pay on the share and the rent, you may have to pay stamp duty in the future if you staircase over 80% ownership. The reality is most people who come in and buy a shared ownership property at say 25%, 35%, 45%, probably never actually get to the point where they staircase to 100% ownership because they resell the property before they get to that stage. So it's normally beneficial to go on the share and the rent because chances are that means you won't pay anything at this stage. If you're buying a shared ownership property with a full market value of less than £300,000, then you would always pay on the share if you're a first-time buyer because that means that you wouldn't have to pay any stamp duty, and you also won't have to pay anything in the future if you staircase to 100% ownership.
That's interesting.
And just to add, on the Savills shared ownership homepage, we have got a first-time buyer guide on buying shared ownership. So if you download the guide, it gives you a step-by-step process. But there was also a section about the kind of costs that you need to that will incur with purchasing the property. So it covers right through costs for mortgage, any legal costs, deposit costs for the mortgage. Also, once you complete on a sale, you need removal cost. So there's other fees associated that we just tell you to budget and put aside when you're buying a property.
Thank you. Very good. Could we have another question?
Yeah, just a little bit connected to costs, I guess, and current times. First-time buyer asking whether now might be a good time to buy a property. Are there any advantages to maybe to buying now, or is it best to wait till a bit later? Anyone?
Jonnie, what would you say?
It's a funny one, especially in this market. If you ask me, I'm doing some webinars later on for different parts of the market, middle market and the top end of the market, and my response to that would be very different. The difference between the first-time buyers market and the rest of them is the amount of demand. This is not a luxury item we're talking about. This is someone's home and their first home. So there is a need. This is a necessity. And as a British person, especially anybody living in the UK, most of us want to live in a home that we own ourselves. So this is our right as much as anything else. And because of that, there is a huge amount of demand for each property, for each first-time buyer property, for each shared ownership property. I think is the amount of buyers fighting over a property at the moment sometimes staggers me. I speak to some people and they talk about at least 2.1 qualified buyers for each property. Now that's not going to go away. And if you're looking at market forces, if you're looking at is now the right time to buy in terms of pricing, you're probably missing the point. This is something that you have probably saved for a long time. The price has been set way before this pandemic. The price has been set due to governmental restrictions. It's been valued by an RSS surveyor before now as well. It might get revalued at some time in the future, but the costs have been borne by the developer as well. So I don't think we're going to see huge fluctuations in prices moving forward in the short to medium term. But we will still see the same amount of demand, in my opinion, for these first time properties. So if you want to sit back and wait, all you're going to do is see this property that's been priced now probably still sell. I don't personally think, and I'm not Nostradamus, but I don't think prices and demand for these properties is going to change much in this period. If anything, I think, and I'm sure Rupi, you might have a comment on this as well, I think there's been some sort of hiatus in terms of operational slowdown. There's been things have not been able to process after this time, and I'm not suggesting a V bounce, but I am envisaging a certain acceleration post lockdown, whereby some people might have been stalled within this process, and they might well say, right, okay, well, I've looked at it online, I've been online and done some virtual viewings, I now want to get on with it. So I would be reticent from a first-time buyer's point of view, especially with shared ownership, to be sitting back and trying to play the market. In my opinion, the play you're trying to make is to get on the ladder and secure your proper first-time home that you are comfortable with.
Can I just add to that? You said 2 point. We supply mortgages to probably 40% of Londoners on shared ownership alone. We're noticing, even though we can't get mortgages processed right now because banks can't do valuations and they've got their own administration issues and everything going on right now, we're getting a lot of demand on the assessments right now. Only last night we had 30 people asking for an assessment. Now, assessment is something we do if you're buying shared ownership. I want to see if you qualify you're approved for a shared ownership mortgage, and second, to see how much you can afford. We usually do around 600 to 700 assessments per month. We haven't seen that fall off during this time. And that 2 to 1 is really 7 to 1 in London. For every shared ownership property on sale, we have 7 people being assessed to buy it.
And they're qualified buyers as well. That's staggering.
Yeah, and most of them qualify because they're filtered before they come to us. So my view, I've been talking to the banks all week at high levels with the banks. The banks are saying, and we had a Zoom seminar with Halifax yesterday, that there's a lot of demand still there and it's pent up. So you can take the Armageddon scenario where it's all going to go and prices going to crash and this and that. But actually, in reality, when I'm talking to banks and lenders, and some of these banks do 25% of all lending in the UK, so their management information is quite valid. They don't see too much of a fall. And last time this happened was during the Lehman's thing, 2008. Shared ownership actually propped up the market, because if you're buying a quarter of a share of a property, that endorses a full value. So it's really important to understand these properties aren't really going to come down in price because of demand and supply. And they're priced correctly in the first place. This is a systematic failure in the economy. This is coronavirus and it's a pause. And after Brexit, the prices were right. We had Brexit, we had all these things going on, elections. So the price is kind of the right price. If they fall, I don't expect them to fall, but I do expect demand to go up when we get going again.
I think the fall. I don't like talking about falls because it's a negative phrase, and it's also it's forecasting, which I'm not a big fan of personally. But any reduction in the market will happen further up. There's no doubt in my mind. You know, most people are. I can perceive a correction in the top, middle, and top end of the market of anything between 15 and 25%. But that's because some parts have probably accelerated a bit too fast anyway. But I totally agree with you, Rupi. This is the first time part of the market is fed by unencumbered people without properties to sell, people with cash, not a huge amount of it, but people with a need as well. And the first time buyer part of the market should prop up any market. That's the foundation stone of each property market there is. Top fed markets like the market in London of some 5 years ago is a dangerous place to be. The first time buyer market is essentially what we all need. And I agree with you, Rupi, as well. These prices were correct. And I can't, with the demand that subscribed to these properties, that will affect the ongoing price in the medium term.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you very much. It's very interesting. Can you just give us another question?
Yeah, I shall. A question around new build homes. Someone's not quite sure whether they should be looking at the second-hand market, or is there anything they should be wary of for new build homes? They seem to think that they're a bit more expensive. Is it better to buy a new home, or is it better to maybe go and do up an older property?
Oh, right. Okay. Asha, what do you think about that?
I mean, the benefit of a new build is obviously it's a brand new property. No one's lived in that property. You don't have to do any works to the property. So you literally just the day of completion, the day you get your keys, you move your furniture in. You also benefit from a defect period. A defect period is when anything goes wrong in your property. You don't need to worry about builder's cost or getting a plumber or electrician out. It's all covered under the defect period. You also get a 10-year NHBC warranty on a property as well. So there's loads of pros of a new build property. Some people prefer to buy a used property where they can go in and make their own stamp to the property, do the works themselves. So really it's on preference. It's what everyone's preference is. So that's my advice, is obviously on your preference, but there are pros, and there's pros to buying a new build property as well.
Jade, what do you think about the pros and cons of new builds versus a second-hand home, so to speak?
So personally, I actually think both are great, and exactly like Ash said, they both have pros and cons. The only thing I'd be slightly cautious of with the resale question there that was submitted about doing up a house yourself. So especially with shared ownership, or almost solely with shared ownership, you can decorate. Of course, it's your home. You can paint walls, you can go lime green if you want, whatever your preference is. But when it comes to extensions or adding driveways and stuff, you do need to discuss that with your housing association first. So I would definitely say don't go straight into buying a resale thinking I'm going to tear walls down and redo the kitchen and refit the bathroom. A lot of housing associations will let you do that work, but you have to get permission and speak to them about it beforehand. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Very, yeah. So
I think
you don't want to be caught out, do you, really?
Yeah.
I think the conundrum there is based, I'd throw it back to whoever asked that question, and what kind of buyer are you? First of all, it's the attitude to risk. Asha mentions you buy a new build property and it's there, it's shiny, it's brand new, and it's lovely. That's partly the reason why there's a premium attached to it. One of the other reasons the premium is attached to that is because there's a very little risk there. Everything is done for you. Nothing needs repairing. There's a period that Asha mentioned whereby there's snagging, everything can be sorted out for you from the developer direct sometimes. There is no risk to that. You walk in, it's what it looked like in the brochure, it's how it appeared when you had the viewing, and everything is fine, hunky-dory. You go to the far end of the scale with a property that needs doing up. And I often think, the first question I ask is, how much Homes Under the Hammer have you been watching? Because everybody feel, look, it's in our DNA, isn't it? We all love property, we want to buy property, and we all think we can do property up. How handy are you? Oh no, but I'll get experts in. Do you know how much it costs to rewire a house? Do you know how much it costs to do ABC, plasterboarding, skimming, getting professionals in to do the plumbing? You don't know. And when you get all these quotes, they change as well. Everything is subject to a contingency fee. And so there is this unknown. And because these properties are cheaper, that's reflected in the terms of a risk. Now, a yield is an expression of a risk. So most people think they're going to buy a property to do up and make a bit of money on it. But the fact of the matter is, there's so much risk attached to that. There is the price of doing it up in the first place. And then after that period of having done it up, the price you will get for it, depending on the finish and depending on what the market will be like at that time. And so you are really, you're not looking at apples and pears, you are looking at chalk and cheese. So if you are someone that is handy, that wants to get their hands dirty and will be able to do a property up to a decent standard, then great. Maybe doing a property up could be for you. But it probably ain't never going to look like a brand spanking new one that you've got straight off developer, because they've had professionals in every single square inch of that house.
I would also add that it's people think that they can do a lot of DIY, which is fine, they probably can, but doing things like electrics, you really need to call experts in. You can't start fiddling around with electricity. It can cause all sorts of problems. So certain things you really do have to call the experts in. I think that's right, isn't it, Jonnie?
No, I've done up every single property I've lived in. The first property I bought was a knackered old terrace in Birmingham, and I did that up. I've done flats up. I'm living in a house at the moment where it's half done up and we're waiting for planning consent to do an extension. I've always done properties up, but that's because I come from my dad was a property developer. I've grew up on building sites. I find it stressful, not as much stress as my wife finds it, because she sees me pulling the remains of my hair out. It is stressful, and I'm not nearly as handy as I think I am. No. I'm really not. And as handy as I think I am heavily reliant on professionals to help me out. And as soon as you start dealing with different people, there is things that can happen. I can't say it plainer than that. Stuff happens. As good as people are, they'll be late, they'll turn up at different times. It's a juggling act. And let's remember, we are all holding down jobs at the same time as doing this. Yeah. It's hugely exciting. It can be hugely rewarding, but it comes with a huge amount of stress as well. Really, my dad's a builder, doesn't wash with me. If you when I show people houses and like, it's all right, I'll do this. My dad's a builder. Okay, right? No.
So true. Very good. Could we have another question, please?
Me.
Sorry, just a question around leasehold, actually. Some nervousness around a new build and leasehold. Is it something that they should worry about? Keen to buy a new build, just want to understand a bit more about what leasehold means.
Adam, I think you might be able to fill us in on what leasehold.
Yes, certainly. The first thing I'd say is there's no reason to be nervous of leasehold. It's one of the most obviously common tenures in this country. If you buy an apartment, it will be leasehold. If you buy a shared ownership property, it will be leasehold. Obviously, there are things to be aware of. You will have to pay service charges to your landlord. Service charges are basically towards the sort of upkeep and maintenance of the estate, the block, the building, the cost of insurance, and you'll probably have to pay a ground rent. But if you sort of flip that the other way, it means that you've got somebody looking after your building view, looking after your block, keeping it clean, keeping the structure safe, etc. So I don't think there's any reason to be nervous of leasehold, but there are things to consider, such as what's the length of the lease. Obviously, you don't really want to be buying a short lease, or if you do, then you need to make sure that's reflected in the price and you know what steps you need to take to extend that lease. How much is the ground rent? Is it reasonable? Is it compliant with mortgage lenders' requirements so that you'd be able to resell the property, things like that. So I think it's a case of just making sure you do your necessary research, as we've been sort of emphasising throughout, and obviously take relevant advice. Speak to a lawyer, speak to your agents, etc., etc.
I think there's a paranoia of buyers about leasehold, and I think it goes back to the fact that everybody wants to own their own property, and they don't feel like they own it unless they own the freehold. There is an obsession in this country with owning the freehold or getting a share of the freehold. And I'll tell you a disadvantage of that. Adam, you rightly said that you have the comfort of someone looking after the building. You could have potentially minimum 2, perhaps 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, 7 people in a property, in a building, that all own a share of the freehold. And without a management structure in place, if something goes wrong with that property, all of these people have to agree to pay for works to the property. So if the roof starts springing a leak, they've got to get everybody to agree, all the shareholders, all the freeholders to agree to remedy these works. Now, if someone doesn't fancy spending much money that year, you've got a trouble on your hands. You've got problems. You've got to try and convince them to pay into this. Now, with a leasehold property, you have this management fee, this service charge, this maintenance fee, call it what you want, it can be called in different things. You pay into this year after year, but you'll also hopefully have built up a sinking fund that can be used, and it will get used at some point for the big jobs of roofing. Yeah. Now, of course, the slight disadvantage of leasehold over freehold is that ticking time bomb, if you like, of how long have we got left on the lease. Now, Rupi, I'm sure you'll be able to tell us what banks are looking for in terms of years unexpired on a lease now.
Usually, if you've got over 65 years, the banks are okay with things. And but we're finding lease extensions are getting easier. So if you've got a short lease, you can ask for it to be extended, pay some money towards that, or the vendor selling it to you can enfranchise it and extend the lease for you as well. So that's more what Adam understands. But if you've got less, but most of the new builder shared ownership leases are now 999 years or into perpetuity, so you're relatively safe. It's what you need to keep an eye on is the service charge. If you're buying a flat with a lift and loads of gyms and concierge service, the service charge could be expensive, and when trying to get a mortgage, they'll take that into account. Always ask what the service charge is on a new build property in a lease.
And you should be able to get hold of, if it, these formal setup, you should be able to get, I mean, I've got properties where you get a set of accounts every year from the management company, what they've spent, where the money's going, what they plan to spend, and how much money is left in the sinking fund. And as any purchaser should be able to ask for details of the management company and how much is being spent and where it's being spent.
Absolutely. So I think we've got time for a very quick question with some just quick answers before we finish.
I guess one here that's quite straightforward is just maybe what are your top 3 tips? I'm about to start my home buying journey. What are your top 3 tips?
Okay, could we start with you, Jade? Top 3
Yeah.
tips.
Sure. So I'll try and be quick. All about research. Honestly, you wouldn't buy a gadget or a car without doing research. Exactly the same if you're buying a house or a flat. So first bit of research, look into your options. So just because buying on the open market doesn't work for you because of the high price points, high deposits, there is shared ownership, there is Help to Buy, there is other stuff. If you're in London, there's London Living Rent. There's so many different options. So make sure that you're looking into those. Look at all the research you can find. So on our site, we have FAQs, guides, pros and cons, jargon busting videos. Make sure you're kind of soaking up all the information you can. I know research has been pretty prominent in this chat so far. Second would be researching the tools available to you. So we have affordability calculators, mortgage comparison tools, budget calculators. So even if you're in the very early stages where you're kind of like, I just don't know if I can afford shared ownership or Help to Buy, you can go on there and you can kind of get your head around it before you even start looking. So you can kind of use budget calculators on our listings. Will show you roughly how much you'll be paying per month on a specific property. Affordability is whether you can afford it. Mortgages are the kind of comparison of what's on the market at the moment. And then I think really vital is researching the homes themselves. So same thing as when you're searching for a property, but also be looking at the areas. So do you need to prioritize good schools for your kids, or are you a young couple that want really good nightlife? Because they're very different areas and they'll have very different price points. So kind of research all across the board, options, tools, and the homes available.
Great. Asha, what are your top tips?
My 3 top tips are, firstly, finance. So find out what your budget is, speak to a financial advisor, get your finances in place. Then narrow down your location. So have a look on all the website portals, property portals, and once you've got your budget, once you've got the location, and then call and book a viewing and go and look at the property.
Brilliant. Jonnie, what about you? I'm sure you've got some great tips.
Well, sage advice from everybody so far, and I imagine there'll be quite a bit of overlap because I think there are some fundamental principles that we all agree on. So I'll try and go a bit left field with mine. Ignore your mum and dad. They probably bought a property yonks ago for about a bag of peanuts. Ignore your mum and dad. They don't know anything about shared ownership.
No.
And whilst they'll give you principles, my dad once told me buy the worst house on the best street. That was true. He also told me not to buy my first property, and I doubled my money on it. So, take that with a pinch of salt. Ignore your mum and dad and do your own research. Don't rely on the person who says they know the most about property. Do your own research. Read First Time Buyers magazine. Look at reports. Be empowered yourself to form your own opinions on the information that's out there. Difficult at the moment, but you can do it. You can do it remotely. Meet the agent. Meet the people selling properties. Don't be afraid of these people. Get them to know you so they can help you. And lastly, fall in love with the flat, fall in love with the property by all means, but don't let the viewing end there. Go there at different times of day. Go there when it's dark. Walk when it's dark from the front door to the local shop. Go there when it's raining. If you can possibly do a viewing when it's lashing down with rain, do it. Feel the walls, get your hands in the corners. Surveying is common sense and it's looking for problems. Spend as much time around the property at different times of day, at different days of the week.
Fabulous. Great. Adam, very quick, 3 quick tips.
Well, obviously, most of it's been covered by everyone. I think the key message is research and take your time. There isn't really much to say from a lawyer's point of view because it's come a little bit further down the line, but I would absolutely just endorse everything that everyone else has said.
Wow.
Take the time to do your research. I'm not going to give 3 specific tips because they've been covered completely
No,
already.
absolutely. Thank you. Rupi.
And with Adam, everyone's covered most things. I mean, you're buying a home. When you buy a home, it's an emotional purchase. And, you know, go and see the properties, fall in love with it. If you fall in love with your home, you're going to be happy there.
Absolutely.
You know, and the thing about the parents, you might need their deposit, so don't totally ignore it. You might need some.
But that's why I was always skint.
So don't totally ignore them. I mean, you know, you might need some help.
You know what? That's the best tip I've heard, Ruth. Pretend you're listening, yeah?
40% of our clients have parental help right now.
Wow, see, yeah.
And that's common. So, you know, get them
Keep on the right side.
At the same time, educate your parents so that your life will be easier. Educate them about
That's
it.
right, advice.
Turn it around.
Well, I think we've ended on a really fun note there, and I'd really like to thank everybody, first of all, for sending in your questions, for watching, thank our experts, thank you, Jonnie, for giving up the time, and we look forward to seeing you all again next Friday. I think it's the 1st of May next Friday at 11 o'clock for our next webinar. So thank you for watching. Thank you for everything. See you soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.